Why is it important to know how to tell time? If you didn't know how to tell time, how would you know when it's time for school? When it's lunchtime, or when it's time to go home? How would you know when it's time to do your homework, or when it's time for bed? If you don't know how to tell time, how will you know when it's time to watch a program on time? There are many different kinds of clocks and watches. Clocks come in all sizes. Some are big and some are small. Some have hands that move to show what time it is. Some clocks have numbers. Some clocks have special numbers that we call Roman numerals, which mean Roman numbers. Clocks that are plugged into the wall are electric. Other clocks and watches run on batteries. Mechanical clocks and watches run without electricity, like spring-powered clocks. This is called a pendulum. It swings back and forth, causing the pointer of the clock to move. Let's take a look at the inside of a clock. As you can see, some clocks have a lot of parts and things in them. Some mechanical clocks have a spring inside that you wind up. As the spring unwinds, the hands of the clock move. This is a gear. It has sharp edges called teeth. Someone figured out how many teeth the gear needed to turn all the way around in 12 hours. If we put a pointer on this gear, we could watch the gear move easier. But we still couldn't tell what time it was. We need a face for our clock with numbers on it, so we can see a number when the gear and the pointer move. This is what we call a clock face. It has 12 numbers. Each number represents 1 hour of the day. Here's a cake with a clock face on top. Each piece of cake is 1 hour. Of course, it doesn't take an hour to eat a piece of cake. Now let's call on Mr. Clock to give us a hand. A clock face has 2 and sometimes 3 pointers or hands. The short hand is the hour hand. The longer hand is the minute hand, and the fast-moving hand shows us seconds. When the short hand points to a number, that tells you what hour it is. Here it's 2 o'clock, and here it's 6 o'clock. What time is it now? It's 10 o'clock. This clock doesn't have pointers, it just has numbers. This is called a digital clock. Digital clocks work on electricity, like the kind you plug in or on tiny batteries. Digital clocks are easy to use. They show you the time with numbers, not hands. This says that it's 1:30, and here it's 2:35. In a whole day, there are 24 hours. Have you ever heard of 24 o'clock or 15 o'clock? Of course not. A clock only has 12 numbers, so it must go all the way around twice in a day. 12 o'clock has 2 names. 12 o'clock noon for daytime, and 12 o'clock midnight for nighttime. 12 o'clock noon is usually time for lunch. At 12 o'clock midnight, you should be in bed and fast asleep. Let's look at a few important times of the day with Mr. Clock. Let's not forget an important hour, 3 p.m., time for school to get out. Have you ever heard someone say, "Just a minute," or "Wait a minute"? Most of us have, but what is a minute? Another important hand of a mechanical clock is the minute hand, the longer one. We need to keep track of smaller pieces of time. We wouldn't say, "Just an hour." What if commercials on TV were on for a whole hour? Minutes are much shorter than hours. The big hand must go all the way around for each hour, but moves only one mark for each minute. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Each little mark between the hour numbers are minutes. 5 minutes, 5 marks. The time it takes for the long hand to move from one number to the next number is 5 minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and finally 60. If the school bus picks you up at 8:25, you had better be ready, because if you're late, even a minute, the bus may leave without you. On this clock, you could say it's close to 1 o'clock, but a much better way would be to say 5 minutes before 1 or 12:55. When the long hand points straight up to the 12, it's exactly on the hour. Here it is 9 o'clock. Here both hands are pointing straight to the 12, meaning it is 12 o'clock. What is a half an hour? 1/2 hour is
30 minutes.
That's right, 30 minutes. 1/4 hour or a quarter hour would be
15 minutes.
15 minutes. How would you say what time it is here? You could say it's 4:30, or you could say it's 4:30, meaning that it's a half an hour past 4. Here you could say that it's a 7:15, and here it's a 11:15. The two dots on a digital clock separate the hour from the minute. What time is it here?
1:25.
Good, 1:25. Digital clocks and watches are easier to read, but mechanical ones are more fun to watch. Let's look at the minute hand a little closer. If the minute hand is past the 6, then it is closer to the next hour. We could say 1:45 or 15 minutes till 2. What time is it now?
1:55.
1:55. 1 hour and 55 marks or minutes, but an easier way would be to say 5 minutes till 2. This clock reads 8:10. Another way to say this would be 10 after 8. Here it is 11:20. Although it would be correct to say it is 40 minutes to 12, we would not say that because it's closer to 11. It is not past the halfway point. It would be much better to say 20 after 11. This astronaut is in space. There is no air to breathe in space, so he has to breathe air from a tank in his spacesuit. His air may only last 30 minutes, so he had better know how to tell time. This scuba diver also breathes air from a tank while diving underwater. He only has 10 minutes of air left. What happens if they run out of air? They better do something fast. They can't hold their breath for too long. How long can you hold your breath? A minute? An hour? Probably not. Most of us can only hold our breath for a few seconds. Seconds are the spaces between the minute marks. A third hand or a number on a digital clock shows us seconds. There are 60 seconds in 1 minute, just like there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Seconds are fast. Blink your eyes once. That took about a second. Each number you see here stays on the screen 1 second. close your eyes when I say start. Ready? Start. Open. That was 10 seconds. 30 seconds is how long one TV commercial usually lasts. 1 minute is how long it takes to brush your teeth. Catching fish might only take a few seconds. Or a few minutes. And for some, a whole hour. The astronaut and the diver only had seconds left to find more air. What if they didn't have a watch or clock? How did we tell time before we had clocks? Early man probably watched the shadows made by the sun, like the shadows made by trees. If you stand in the same place all day, you could watch your shadow. It starts long in the morning and gets shorter until at 12 o'clock there will be very little shadow. Then it will grow longer in the afternoon. If you put a tall stick in the ground around 12 noon and marked each hour by putting small sticks in the ground where the shadow reaches, the next day you could tell what time it was just by looking at the small stick that the shadow was close to. What time is it when the shadow is touching this stick?
3 o'clock.
Sticks can get knocked down and are not very strong. Man needed something better to tell time. That's probably why the sundial was invented. The sundial worked by using numbers on a dial and watching the shadow as it moved from one number to the next one. Can you tell what time it is here? The shadow is touching the 3, so it must be 3 o'clock. Here the shadow is right on 11. It must be 11 o'clock. The sundial was not very good when it was cloudy or nighttime. Other ways to tell time came later, like the sand clock. An hourglass is a sand clock that takes 1 hour for the sand to run out of the top and into the bottom, but it wasn't very good for a wristwatch. This sand clock is used to time eggs. It takes 3 minutes before it needs to be turned over. Here is another clock you wouldn't want to wear on your wrist, a candle clock or this water clock. We have many kinds of clocks today, from the big grandfather clock to this Kit Kat clock. And we have wind-up alarm clocks and the funny cuckoo clock. A cuckoo clock will tell you the time even if you're not looking at it. Every hour the clock will cuckoo. If you want to know what time it is, count how many times it cuckoos. It will cuckoo once for 1 o'clock, twice for 2 o'clock, and so on. What time is it now? It's 4 o'clock. Many other clocks make noise on the top of the hour too, like this grandfather clock. Many clocks tell us what time it is and are fun to watch. This is a candle clock. As the candle burns down from one mark to the next, 1 hour has passed. By the time it burns down this far, 3 hours have gone by. This is an unusual watch. It's called a stopwatch. Its clock face is different. Stopwatches are used to time races. When the starter says go, he pushes the button on the watch, and as the winner crosses the finish line, he pushes it again, which stops the clock. This runner ran the race in just over 5 seconds. A stopwatch measures short periods of time. Besides hours, minutes, and seconds, we can also measure time in days, months, or even years. First, let's look at what a day of time is. The Earth spins in space like a merry-go-round, only much slower. It takes 24 hours or 1 day for the Earth to spin all the way around once. When astronauts go up in the space shuttle, they sometimes take pictures of Earth. See how the Earth is spinning? Each 24-hour day is made up of day and night. Night is when the sun isn't shining on our side of the Earth. Here is the Earth and the sun. See how part of the Earth is in day and part in night? It's like this globe. Pretend the light is the sun. See how some parts of the Earth are in light and some are in dark? As the Earth spins, parts that were in the dark become light. When astronauts went to the moon, they took these pictures of Earth. We can only see the part of Earth that's in sunlight. The part of Earth that isn't facing the sun is in darkness, and we can't see it here. As the sun starts shining on this part of America in the morning, it would still be dark on this part because the Earth is spinning slowly, and like our globe shows, the sun hasn't reached that far. From here on Earth, what do we see when the Earth goes from night to day? We see the sunrise, and when the Earth goes from the light into darkness, it's sunset. There are even more ways to measure time that you will eventually learn about, like months, years, and even 100 years, which is called a century. Time to review. We've learned that there are many different kinds of clocks and watches, and that they all tell time. Mr. Clock showed us the 12 numbers on a clock's face and what they mean. We learned about the clock's hands, the hour hand, the minute hand, and the fast-moving second hand. We've learned about half hours and quarter hours. We've learned how a clock can tell us what time it is. Do you know what time it is on this clock? We know that 12 noon and 12 midnight are two names for 12 o'clock. We've learned that each hour has 60 minutes and that there are 60 seconds in a minute. Digital clocks are easy to read, and the two little dots separate the hours from the minutes. We looked at shadows and how they helped early man invent the sundial. And finally, we learned how the Earth and the sun working together make time work with the sun shining to give us daylight and the Earth slowly spinning to create nighttime and daytime. Well, I wish we had more time, Mr. Clock, but it's time to go.